Hello, and welcome to this special Christmas episode of Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on episode 5 of Chobits. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. Alright, ladies and gentlemen. Last we left off, Chi has displayed a remarkable ability to learn. But despite that, she's not quite there yet and things still get a little bit out of hand. So the question is, essentially, what sort of trouble is she going to get into now? Unfortunately, Hideki has a mock exam. The idea being that, this is to see if all your studying is paid off. Oh, she's offering a bonus. Oh, I take that back. That's a punishment, like, ooh, I'll call on the people who don't do well. So I can only imagine that Chi, in her eagerness to learn or something like that, infringes upon Hideki's study time. Oh dear, indeed. I mean, it is only a practice exam, and it is only the first of presumably a few, so it's not the end of the world if you don't do all that great. I guess now that I think about it, Hideki also has to work, so, his time is sort of highly monopolized. Yeah, he's saying, like, ooh, if I don't work tomorrow and if I just, buckle down and study, that never happens, Even the best made plan does not survive contact with reality. I mean, fortunately, I was never in a position in school where, I really, really needed to study. I could sort of get by with no or, at most moderate study, but, I certainly feel for Hideki in his position. That's some dire stuff when you need to study because a really bad exam's coming up. Yeah, unfortunately, despite Hideki describing all this stuff as obstacles to his goal, it really is more a microcosm of life, I guess, because, the older you get, the more everything sort of competes for your attention, and it's really a game of what can you afford to ignore the most at any given time? Wow. That's a remarkable statement from Chi, considering that it is, in essence, timely and appropriate. Maybe there isn't, a whole bunch of meaning behind it the way she says it, but, it's better than being entirely nonverbal. Ooh, you know what? I've had a good idea for Hideki. In programming and other things, there's this thing called, the rubber duck approach or something, I guess, where it's basically you walk through your code and you explain it to a little rubber duck, and if you can do that, then you're on the right path. So perhaps Hideki could study and teach Chi at the same time. Essentially walking over his lessons and teaching her things. Like, she might not be able to understand advanced concepts right away, but given how she absorbs things like a sponge, like, some of it's bound to stick eventually, right? Even if you just keep bombarding her with it. Because the idea being, she's a computer, and I feel like she would be better able to collate a bunch of seemingly disparate information than a human mind would be. The idea that he's gonna sit there and study all day, like, that's just a non-starter to begin with, but I feel like Chi being around as a potential distraction isn't gonna help either. If only just because, like, she can't help but mimic what he does. Yeah, this would be a lot better if Chi, in her self-awareness, was able to help motivate him or something like that, but at this stage in the game, she doesn't really have it in her. I guess it is nice that she's so incredibly devoted to mimicking everything he does. Although, she might not have, I don't want to say much of a choice, but much of any other option, really. So Hideki has studied, in part, learning English. Foreign languages are tough, man. And I've been reliably informed that English is perhaps one of the most difficult foreign languages to learn if you're not a native speaker. Man, I am a bit surprised by Hideki's diligence just because he never really struck me as the type, and even with this hated subject, he's still applying himself. That's certainly indicative of good character. So this is one of those things where I feel like if Chi's really getting in the way, perhaps he could direct her to something like, I don't know, give her a puzzle or something. Like something to do that'll keep her quiet and out of the way. Now, watching this in the time and place that I am, it's very interesting that the loss of a dictionary is such a big, horrible thing, because with the proliferation of the internet, dictionaries and encyclopedias and other things like that would have been treasured not that long ago are, in essence, obsolete. So, if I don't know the definition of a word exactly, I can just look it up, easy peasy. And I get the feeling that if Chi had the right software, he probably could too, but, man, imagine having to learn a foreign language without the appropriate dictionary. That is abominable. Ooh. Yeah, and that's the thing, too. Dictionaries and encyclopedias, they are expensive. Knowledge is power and all that, but it turns out it's costly, too. Now, this might be a good opportunity to buy Chi, a little picture book or something. Just here, read this. I mean, I guess if nothing else, it's a bit of a teachable moment saying, hey, this is a bookstore, this is what you can do here. You can buy things, you can read things, I mean, I feel like maybe Hideki would be wrong to just sort of plunk down a big book in front of her, but, if you start with something small, you could probably teach her to read, that's certainly not beyond her, right? Okay, so she seems to be fixated on one book in particular. And maybe it's just a whim, but, oh boy. Oh my god, it's a picture book and it's that expensive. Oh dear. This truly is a dilemma where you have to pick between, Chi and your exam and all that. I mean, surely you could just sort of flip through the dictionary, look up respect, and call it a day. You know, that being the word he doesn't know. Ah. What a big softy. He can't deny chi. Now, you know, it might just be a picture book, although it seems to me based on the cover it's more of like an art book. You know, like, it's called The Empty Town, so I assume it's like cityscape photography. Oh boy. Man, you know, there is no good explanation for that, having to explain to the guy, it's like, you know, look, my persicum's learning, okay? Like, oh dear. I guess there is the matter of teaching her to read, too. You know, you do have to start small. And I guess if he calls it a picture book, then that's probably about as good a place as you can start as any. So I guess what I'm wondering here is this picture book essentially a plot device for, you know, something else here? Like, is this indicative of G's mental state or something like that? Or is it prophetic, perhaps? Now, I guess I'm not surprised that she reads in a very stilted sort of way, but that she can read at all is pretty remarkable in and of itself. Okay, so I guess they seem to think he's in need of cheering up, but... Okay, it's studying. It's in regards to the test. That makes sense, you know. He has sort of forgotten that he should be studying. Whoops. But, I mean, surely you can wing it on the English portion, right? Well, I guess that's another thing, too. Like, you can always ask a neighbor for a favor, you know? Ooh. Yeah, unfortunately, Hideki seems to have picked up that bad habit of procrastination whereby you don't do your stuff until the last minute and now it bites you in the rear. Ooh, okay, so she's relating to the book a little bit more than perhaps would be advisable. That, you know, the whole town was empty, the whole apartment is empty, and she's alone, you know? I feel like there should probably be a good discussion with Chi about how fiction and reality aren't the same thing, but, I don't know. Oh man, they're busting out terminology like nouns and adjectives and verbs. Oh dear indeed. And you know what, the less they say about adverbs the better, frankly. But something tells me Hideki's gonna get way too absorbed in his studies and she might get up to, if not necessarily mischief, something. You know, this book is just making me think a little bit. The Empty Town. Wow. Like, suddenly she's better at reading. Now, you know, I'm wondering... Well, no. I was going to say, what if this was like a horror book or something? You know, something to the point where Chi is frightened, and you sort of have to explain that, like, no, it's just a scary story, but... Rather than that, it's more about isolation, it seems. And I'm wondering if Chi's going to perhaps relate to this, understanding that she is a persicum, not human, and also sapient, you know, capable of free will and all that. I mean, once you sort of understand that, that's gotta be very isolating. Ooh, okay. So this is talking about, like, when you fall in love, you have to leave and all that. So, that's a fair bit of foreshadowing here, and I'm not sure I like that, but I guess this sort of harkens back to what the Persicom expert said about how, like, look, you shouldn't fall in love with the Chobit, okay? And it seems as though she might have some greater purpose. Wow. Yeah, that's certainly unsettling that something within her seems to have come online. You know, it might have just been like an artistic choice to add the bloom, but if I didn't know better, I would assume she is glowing, and, you know, it's probably not good. She doesn't exactly have RGB lighting all over her. Yeah, like, that's definitely a little bit unsettling, yeah. I would tend to assume that Persicoms don't do that normally. Oh dear. And just like that, it's over. So, the question is, what do you make of that? Because I feel like that book is definitely foreshadowing in some sort of way. So it's interesting that you can sort of examine a Persicom and see what's wrong with it by examining it physically. Which, you know, that sort of defies my understanding of how computers work, unless something's really catastrophically wrong. But, yeah, you know, in Hideki's place, I would certainly be very worried too. I mean, like, I've had my computer, like, blue screen before. Like, I'd imagine this is sort of similar in that what you do is you just turn it off and turn it back on again. But, I don't know. I feel like that's a bit more involved with the Persicom rebooting. And, you know, Chi being her own special case. You know, it's like the old computer in companies where, like, it runs the entire mainframe or whatever and you don't shut it down ever or else. So, she seems to have become a bit more nonverbal, which I'm not sure what to make of that. And interestingly, I feel like Hideki could afford to learn a lesson here about, screening things before you just pass it along to Chi blindly. Like, you know, maybe start with, like, a nice, simple, easy children's book that, like, you can't learn any bad ideas from. You know, and then, like, once she's developed a bit more, then, you know, give her something a bit more complex and challenging. You know. Like, I don't know, I wouldn't let a 5-year-old read Devilman, you know? And I guess maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration. Like, I don't think that's what's happened here, but, you know, to give her just a complex book, like, I don't think that's necessarily appropriate. However, she seems to have benefited to the point where she's seemingly reading the cover of that book. And I guess she seems to be learning new phrases on her own, too. I mean, he didn't teach her that, right? You know, that is interesting because it seems like she is sort of encouraging him of her own volition. You know, it's not like he instructed her, like, don't let me quit, like, make me keep working. So, in these little subtle ways, she's displaying this sapience and this free will that we've been informed she might have. I have to say, I do like the the pacing of Chobits. You know, they're not jumping in with both feet to the whole Sapiens thing. They're walking it slowly, you know? And I think that's probably for the best, really. Makes it more satisfying and earned in the end. And you know, she might be like a glorified cassette machine at this point, just like repeating a phrase. But, you know, there's something to be said for that. Someone to just stand by and encourage you. Now, I guess the question is, did it work? I'm hoping that it did, but it would also be kind of funny if he did flunk it and would get called on more. Although I think narratively it would make sense if he did pass, or at least did reasonably well. You know, better than before. I see he's not getting into specifics. You know, probably like good, not great, but... You know, sometimes a B is enough. A B will get you your degree, after all. Now, it's interesting that he puts everything to Chi and how she encouraged him. And I guess, you know, she did encourage him, but, like, I don't think you should discount the fact that he did, in fact, study. But, I don't know. It probably doesn't hurt to encourage Chi and thank her and all that. Oh, yeah. No surprise that we're hearing those words again from the book. You know. Like, they're not laying it on thick, but I think it is pretty clear that should romance happen, she's gonna have to leave. And, I hope that won't be the end of it, frankly. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. Merry Christmas, Space Cowboy.